And we are recording now. So tonight's agenda is we kind of got an opportunity to say hey to everybody and introduce ourselves. And as mentioned before, we're going to be talking about automating your content with dynamic conditions. We'll learn how to dynamically show or hide or change content based on the conditions you set. You can set conditions based on existing content, specific date range, user status, and a whole bunch more. So I'm going to go through several scenarios to give you an example of how that can be done. So we'll go here. I'm Kerry Wolf. I'm your host. And Brian Griffin, wave Brian, he's the co-host. And as I said, we've already talked to each other. I think, of course, the people that come to filter in will we'll have to get to meet them, get to talk to them and know them a little bit later. So what we're going to do, one note I have here in the green is that for this to work, you'll need Elementor Pro, because we're talking about, because in the regular Elementor, there are some limited functions of dynamic content and conditions, and you'll need Elementor Pro for these things to work. But examples of what we're going to show you is we're going to show you how to show or hide content based on a post category. In other words, if you have posts of a particular category, you can set up in your single post template certain content to show if a post is in a particular category. We'll also show you how to add a fallback featured image, because in my experience, I run into this a lot with my clients, is that they'll have a blog, and it's all, the blog archive is all nicely set up where they have a featured image at the top and they all look nice, but then they don't add a featured image and you got this one with no featured image. So we could set it up to where if they forget to put a featured image, then sort of a generic branded fallback image will show up if they don't put a featured image in. We're going to show you how to do that. We're going to show you how to have banners or graphics or they could be affiliate links, they could be promotional ads, they could be webinar announcements to show on pages based on the date, so that you could say, I want you to show this banner between January 1st and February 1st, and then on 1 second after February 1st starts, then a different banner will take its place. So you could have different ads or whatever you like showing up, and just based on the date, it'd change automatically. Going to show you how to have custom login and log out buttons in your header that show depending on whether somebody's logged in or logged out. So if somebody's logged in, the button will say log out. If they're not logged in, it'll say log in. And then one little thing, that this last item, dynamically change copyright date each year. This is actually, you can do this with Elementor. And the reason I throw this in, because we just passed the beginning of the new year, and some themes will do this automatically. And there very possibly could be a plugin. I've never looked. But to have 50 sites to go in and change the copyright date's a real pain in the ass. So we'll show you how to do that. But to do these automations, we're going to need 2 free plugins. We're going to use one more than the other. We're going to mostly be using dynamic conditions for Elementor. And I will put that link in the chat if you're interested in checking it out. So that's there. And then we're also going to be using Elementor custom skin. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as Ellie custom skin. And this, let me get you a link for that. This plugin allows you to create what they call a custom loop. The way WordPress, let's go to our demo site here. We'll go to the blog. Okay. I'm sure you've seen something like these. This is how a blog archive page would have a featured image, the title, and any kind of metadata, and an excerpt and a read more. Well, all this data, or these, and it could be other stuff, they're built on the page by running a loop. It just goes through and repeats and loads up content that we predefine. And in Elementor, we have archive post widgets, and we can edit them in some ways, and but not so much as we might like sometimes. So we can create basically a custom skin for our post, and this will be necessary in what we're going to try to do, and I'll obviously explain why in a sec. So, and then, well, we'll go into this next slide here after we've gone through our demo here. So the first thing we're going to show is, is to how to show and hide content based on a category. And so let's do that. So I'm going to go to posts. Well, first of all, let's go to post. Okay, and I've got 4 sample posts, and you'll notice the categories, 3 of them are dynamic conditions as the category, and one of them is, the category is Elementor. So then if we go to the blog, or the blog archive page, we have it set up to where on posts that have Elementor as the category, like this one, you'll see there is a banner ad for an Elementor product. Again, this could be a lead magnet for something you may have, but you can conditionally say, show this if the category is Elementor. And just to drive home the point, we'll go to this post, and its category is dynamic conditions, and you don't see that image. So, and then let's go through, well, one other part, because we're kind of going to do 2 things at once, because both of these things that we're going to do, we're going to be doing it in a single post template. So let's go back to the blog. Actually, we could have done it with this one. Okay. So if we go to this post, or let's this post. This post, and let's edit the post. We see that we have a featured image. We'll view the post. We'll go back to the blog. Now we'll look at this one, and we'll edit the post. And we see that there has not been a featured image applied to this post, but even though there's no featured image applied to this post, it has a featured image. So we're going to talk about how we manage that. So So before we jump into that, I want to also give you some, because I don't have time to go through and set every one of these things up from scratch. There's not enough time, but I wanted to give you a sense of how dynamic conditions work. So this is just a post with an image. So if we edit with Elementor, okay. So if I were to select I can make dynamic conditions on using this plugin on widgets. This is an image widget, or I can do it on sections. More often than not, but not always, I'll do it on sections. So I've got this section that has the widget in it, and we're going to go to advanced, and then we see this new, because I've got these plugins I told you about, they are installed. We have this new option here that appears in the sidebar in Elementor. It's dynamic conditions. Now, when I first saw this was kind of confusing because I thought, well, that looks like I'm supposed to do something with a picture, but this shows up on most any kind of widget. It's actually, we're in a section, but if you put your cursor over it, you see there's this dynamic tag. You can click on that, and these are all the dynamic tags that are available in dynamic conditions. All the different things that we could key off of. And tonight we're going to be using 4. We're going to use the featured image item. We're going to use post terms, and then we go down to the site. We're going to use current date and time, and then we're going to use user info. So we pick our dynamic tag, and then with this free plugin, we only have 2 kinds of options. We can show or hide whatever it is we've selected based on conditions, and then we choose the condition, and we have these choices for conditions: equal to, not equal to. Perhaps, if it's, we're looking to match a category, we could say category is equal to, and then we would put whatever category we want. If we're like with the featured image, we might select featured image, and if it's empty, then we would show an image. The between or less than or greater than can be used for dates. And we'll show you that. So let's move on to, we're going to demo how the fallback feature image works, and then how content based on category works. So let's go back to the dashboard, and I'm going to go to templates, theme builder, and single post template, and I'm going to edit with Elementor. Okay, so we look at here, we can see that this is a single post template, and we go up here and click on this. This is set to be the featured image. It's basically an image tag that is dynamically linked to featured image. But there's nothing there. And then you'll see this little eye before I bring my cursor over and the pencil shows up, there's a little eye. That kind of indicates that that's a dynamic. But if we click on that and we go to advanced, or the dynamic conditions. Here we go. I think I had that clicked. Okay. So this is the featured image. It's keying off of the featured image, and I'm going to show this image, this generic branded featured image, when I'm going to show it when the featured image is empty. So that's why on the post that had the this post had no featured image. Now it has a featured image because we dynamically told it to say, if the featured image is empty, show this. Otherwise, it won't. So, and then, so we've got that going on. And then if we go down to the bottom of the page, we see we have an Elementor ad showing up. But we'll show you how that there's actually options here, and it could be showing a different banner, but we'll show that in a sec. But before we do that, I want to go back, and we talked about how we could make this in our single post template we can dynamically change it if the featured image is not there. But if I were to just do this and then go to the blog, it wouldn't carry over to the blog archive page. This would just be, there wouldn't be anything here. This title would just slide up. So when I was working on this a few weeks ago, I thought, well, how do I do that? Then I thought of the LA custom skin. So what we'll do is we'll go back and we'll exit to the dashboard, and we'll go to templates, theme builder. And I think I mentioned earlier, the way that L custom skin works is it works through the loop. So when we have that plugin installed, we get this new tab in the theme builder. It's called Loop. And I've called this the blog archive loop. So we're going to edit it with Elementor. Now it looks kind of weird when you first see it because everything's big and these are muted out. To be honest with you, I don't know why. Sometimes it does this in the Elementor editor, but we can still work with them. But it looks all big, but if we were to get a sense of, because let's go back up here. It's all small here, but we can tell what it's going to look like. But if we happen to go to mobile, see it's pretty much like it looks on the archive page. So let's go back to desktop. Let's walk through what we've got going here. This is not dissimilar from what we did on the single post page, because this is looking for a featured image, just like on the single post page. The featured image would be here in the loop, and we've done a similar thing here. In the dynamic conditions, featured image is empty, show this, same thing. And then we kind of go through and just make a template for our loop. So this is the heading, and we've decided that this is a heading widget. What we decided to do is we used a dynamic tag here. These are built into Elementor, and we say post title, and that puts that there. And then this is just the date, and then we have this is the post summary. We can go to the text. It's basically a text widget, and we can go and say, let's make that the post summary. And then this is added. This is basically an icon list with this text, and there's no icon, and it's linked to the post URL. So it knows. And to go back to this, the picture, for both of these featured images, we go to, let's go to this featured image. We link that to the post URL too, so that when we click on that, we click on this, it goes to the post URL like that. So, and as I mentioned before, this is all being recorded. So, and I'll post this probably tomorrow sometime, and I'll send out a link in Meetup where you can go back and watch all this, because I know I'm moving through this fairly quickly, but there's a lot to cover. So we use this Elementor custom skin so that we can get this featured image into the blog archive. That was the sole purpose of us using it in this instance. So let's exit to the dashboard. So we now have seen how to add a backup featured image, and we've seen how to add an ad of some kind, but I'm going to go into that a little bit deeper. So let me make sure I'm going in the right direction here. Just to be clear, this was based on the fact that this post is an Elementor post. Let me go back to the single post template to show that. I don't think I covered that. Let's go to theme builder, single post. Okay, let's look at this. I do this to the section rather than the image, because if I just did the image, the section would still be there if it was not showing, and it would add extra space. So I do it to the whole section. So the way this works is the dynamic conditions for this are set to post terms. And post terms are things like categories and tags. And so we have to specify. Click on the little wrench here, and we're looking at categories. And so we're looking at post terms, and we're looking at categories. We're going to show it when the condition contains, and it's going to be the type of content is text, because we're looking for the category. And when it contains Elementor, it shows it. If I were to have it, maybe I've got a blog posts about some other plugin or some other tool, I could have that be the category, and it could be different here. But that so it shows, this will show up on posts that are categorized as Elementor, but not on posts that are not categorized as Elementor. We're using the same template. All of these individual blog posts are using the same template. We're using this template, and it's generating different kinds of content depending on certain conditions. So that's kind of cool. Then another one that I think might be the most interesting is we're going to show ads or banners based on the date. And we're going to do this on a page. We're going to do this. We're going to do this on what I'm calling the home page. If you were at last month's meetup, we went through going through the site settings, and we set this up in site settings with these rounded corners and shadows and the colors of the headers and all that stuff. So we just kind of repurposed this page. But this is a page, and it has another banner. But if we go to the page itself, which would be this one, we see we have two. We have a banner for dynamic conditions, and we have a banner for Elementor custom skin. But why isn't the dynamic conditions showing up? Well, let's take a look. We select that section, go to Advanced, and we go to Dynamic Conditions. And now we're looking at the current date and time. That's what we're paying attention to. So we show this banner when the current date and time is between, and we're looking at the date, so it's between particular dates, and these are the dates that we're looking for. So this was, if it was between January 1st at midnight, 2021, and February 1st at midnight, 2021, that would show. And then we go down to this one, and we go to the Advanced Dynamic Conditions. Same setup. We're comparing it. It's to the time on the computer. Now, if you have your computer on, well, we're here on the East Coast of the United States, but so we're on Eastern time. But if you're, that's why it's important to, when you do you set up your general settings, get your time zone set to where you are. So it's looking for the current date and time here, and it will show this when the date and time is between February 1st at 1 second after midnight. So 1 second after this disappears, this would appear if you reloaded the page. And then, so this would show from February 1st at midnight, roughly, and it would continue to show until March 1st at midnight. Now, let's try something. Let's take this, and we'll do the dynamic conditions, and let's extend this out till tomorrow. So this now is set to show from the 1st until February 12th at midnight. Well, it's February 11th right now, so it's not. It should still show. So let's update it, and let's go back and look at the page. We'll go back up to the top. We'll reload the page. Scroll down. Oh, there it is. So it's showing because it is in the right time frame. And it just so happens that these time frames overlap now. So if we go back and put it back the way it was, and update, and reload, it goes away. So that's pretty cool. And there's all kinds of use cases. Maybe you're going to have a Black Friday sale, or maybe the week prior to Black Friday, every day you want to have a different banner show up on a particular page. Well, you could stack these. You could have a whole series of sections with a bunch of different ads, but they're all sequenced to show in certain orders. So, this would show on a Monday, and this would show on a Tuesday, and so on and so forth. And you'd set it up, and it would run. And so I think that's pretty cool to be able to do that, I think. So that's another way to use the dynamic conditions. And then we said we'd show you how to show a login and log out button based on user status. So right now, if I go to the top, obviously I'm logged in, so button I see says log out. Well, this is built in the header template in the theme builder. So let's go back to dashboard, and I'm going to go to theme builder and header, and then I'm going to edit with Elementor. Now you see that I've actually got two buttons here. Two buttons side by side. Of course, we see the little eyeballs, kind of giving me a hint that it's dynamic. And so let's take a look, see what's going on with the login button. So if I click on the login button, go to advanced dynamic conditions. Now this was a little bit tricky for me to get just right. So what we're looking for is user info, but we're looking for a particular field of user info, because there's all kinds of fields associated with the user info. Display name, username, first name. This could be handy if you had a membership site where you could actually have something on a page that says, hey, Brian, and it would pull that information from their user info from the first name. But I'm just going to want to have their ID to know that they are logged in. Now, let's see, do I need to do anything? I don't think so. Okay, so the dynamic tag is user info with the field of ID, and I'm going to show the login button when the user ID is empty. There's not going to be any user ID if you're not logged in. So we'll show that when somebody's not logged in. We go over here to the log out button, and we go to advanced dynamic conditions. Same thing, user info ID, show when it is not empty. So if I'm logged in, my ID is going to show, so it's not empty. So that's how that works. And this is the header template. So let's get out of here. And let's see, make sure I'm over here. Okay, let's go out of here, and I'm going to log out. Okay, so got the log out button here, but now I am logged out. So I'm going to refresh the page, and it changes to log in. So, I could log in this way. Oops. Let me get this back. Shouldn't have done that. Just play some background music for a second here. Okay, so I'm going to log back in. Now see, we have log in, and I'm going to log in. Now it says log out. Pretty cool. Now, I'm going to do one more thing. And this does not require the dynamic conditions plugin. You can do this with Elementor just by itself. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Because what we want to do, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. we just went through January of a new year, and there are some themes that will do this, and there's probably a plugin that will do this, but a lot of websites are set up, you have this information, this text information, maybe in your footer template or in your themes footer section, and you got to go and open it in and change it to 2021. And if you're managing a lot of sites, you've got to go in and do it 40 or 50 times. That's a real pain. But now, I think I've mentioned it, but I'll say it again. There are some themes that will do this automatically, but we can do this with Elementor. So let's go to our templates, theme builder, and we'll go to footer, and we'll edit with Elementor. Okay, so here we are. And so I thought with this one, it might be easiest to show, actually rebuild this. So I'm going to take a text widget and just slide that up underneath there. And then I'm going to go to the dynamic tags, and I'm going to go to current date and time. And then I'm going to click on the wrench, and I'm going to go to date format, and I'm going to choose custom. Now, more experienced WordPress people would recognize this is their code for how you show dates. And if you go to the WordPress codex, you can find different ways of arranging this. But all I'm interested in is the Y, because the Y is the year. So I'm going to delete it, delete that. You see, now I have 2021. So, and then, so I've got the year in there. I'm going to go to advanced, and then I can put content before it and content after it. So I'm going to, before it, I'm going to put a copyright with the copyright symbol, and I'm going to add a space in there so it doesn't butt up right against the date. And then for after, I'm going to cut and paste this text, and I'm going to go back to the beginning of it and add a space so it doesn't butt up. So we've got that. Then I'm going to go to the text widget, do a little formatting. I'm going to style it, center, and I'm going to use my Elementor global colors, which we talked about last month, and set it to there. So that's how we create that. So going forward, when 2022 rolls around, this will change automatically. I don't have to do anything. So I thought that was kind of a helpful thing. And these are all very simple dynamic type things, but you can get creative if you let's go back here. No, that's not. We can get creative, and it takes a little bit of imagination to figure out how we could take advantage of these. But just by kind of cruising through what you have to work with in dynamic conditions, because we have all these dynamic tags that we could maybe do something with, and we also have all these conditions that we can adapt them to make something. But the biggest limitation, primary limitation, is that all it really does is hide and show. So, but it's free, but it can be helpful. Now there are paid plugins that do a lot more, but they're there are two that I'm sure that I know there's a lot more, but there's two that I know do what I'm thinking of. And I use this plugin here, the Plus add-ons for Elementor. And let's see, the Plus, I'll put the link to that in the chat. And where am I going here? There we go. And then the dynamic content for Elementor. I have not used this one, but I've seen a number of tutorials on this by Paul C. at WP Tuts. He's got a very good YouTube channel. It's called WP Tuts. And the challenge with this is it doesn't have a lot of documentation, and it's kind of hard to figure out. Whereas with the Plus add-ons for Elementor, they're widgets, and I'm not selling this. I don't have any affiliate links on this. I'm just showing you. If you pick a widget, there is a dedicated training video to that widget, and there's tons of widgets. Only little drawback is that the people, this company is in India, and the people who do the walkthroughs sometimes different people do it, but some of them have a more thick Indian accent. So sometimes it's hard to understand, but they go through very thorough tutorials. So that's very helpful. Not so much with this tool, but
and that's
I
my
encourage you to the dynamic.
Yeah, and I have to say you're correct. So the dynamic content is really for advanced people that are used to working with dynamic content. I mean, there's a lot of, I use it a lot. I mean, that is like my go-to plugin because of the amount of features it has. And I'm hoping to do a program on it soon. I just haven't figured out where to start at because there's so much.
Yeah, I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
Sharon's right. There's a ton of stuff. And one of the benefits of it that I remember is that it is one of the few things that will work with repeater fields.
Yeah.
I think that's, and if you've ever, ACF, for those that don't know, that stands for Advanced Custom Fields. And then, unless correct me if I'm wrong, but last time I remember, you can bring in dynamic content in Elementor from Advanced Custom Fields, but not repeater fields.
Right.
This last time, yeah.
Yeah,
and,
you really had to work at it to do
yeah.
that.
So
Like
this
if you're trying to do a table and use repeater fields like we used to with I would say old-fashioned coding. We could do it very easy, but Elementor hasn't been set up for that. And even finding a table in Elementor, in the beginning was hard to do, but now it's a lot easier. Like a lot of us, those of us that are producing data grids and stuff like that, this is very, very useful.
Cool. Well, if you get to a place to where you or want to do a talk on that, you can, obviously, if you do it on your meetup, let me know, and we'll pile in. Or if you want to be a guest speaker, we'll be happy to host you to do that.
Sure, no problem.
Because, yeah, we'd love to learn more about that. I had to, I guess, I didn't go down this road. I kind of sort of get things that fulfill a need, and I built one of the things about these two particular paid plugins is they give you, whereas with the dynamic conditions plugin, we're kind of limited. Like we can only do one condition. But with the plus add-ons, and I believe with the dynamic, what do they call them? So dynamic content for Elementor, you can stack conditions. And I had to do this last year on a membership site for it was a youth training program for it was a nonprofit it was faith-based. It was for young Black women in high school, or young Black girls in high school, helping them get ready for life, getting them set up to go to college, and mentoring, setting them up with a mentor and stuff. So there were many levels of membership to the site. There were 3 different kinds of students. There were different grades, and there were staff, different levels of staff. Some were administrators, some were just editors. There were mentors, there were volunteers. And we needed to have it set up to where, and of course they all had logins, and associated with their login was who they were. Were they a student? Were they a mentor? Were they a volunteer? Were they a staff editor? Were they an admin? All these different kinds of users, but they needed to see different kinds of content. So in the header template for that particular website, it had 5 different menus stacked. Imagine this was like that. I looked at the template, there'd be 5 of these menus stacked on top of each other, but they had different links and different content. And with the plus add-ons, I could say, for this particular section that has the menu, show this if the user is this kind of user, or this kind of user, or this kind of user, and hide it if it's this kind of user or this kind of user. And I mean, it just, it's stacked up. But it just can get so granular with these other kinds of plugins. So if you ever have sites where you need to have different content for different users, this is very helpful. So let's go back to our thing here.
Hey, Kerry, I just posted in the chat for everyone to reply in the chat. Just let us know what level expertise you are with Elementor, with 1 being brand new beginner in Elementor and 10 being the expert. We're just trying to run a survey. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Elementor likes to know that kind of stuff. So let's see here. So I think that is the bulk of what we were going to go over. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or things they need help with? We've got a few people in the house that know a little bit about Elementor.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
Is there a place, there's all these great things you can do with these conditional plugins. Is there a place that you could go to see use cases and perhaps how you would build out for a particular use case, like you just said, like for example, membership site that has a bunch of different members, and you show it something for this and this and this, but not this and this. Is there some place that might aggregate the sort of use cases that you can just conceptualize it, give you just some able to conceptualize it a little better? For someone like me, I haven't used this a lot, but I can sort of glimpse how very useful it would be, but I have a hard time, like for me, I need to see a use case built out and then I'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. Now I get it.
Well, that's actually would be a really good idea to actually build out something like that for people. In fact, I'm going to make a note of that.
I mean, yeah, I know with, when you watch the, with that one where there's the videos for each one of the plugins,
Right.
you'll probably get some ideas from there. But, I'd like to, but coming from, the total other side where you have a client need for a website, and you're like, all right, let's do it this way. Like I find something like that useful to like be able to get into it.
Elementor has,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Carrie.
Go ahead, Sharon. Go ahead.
So I guess a short answer is not exactly, but Elementor does have on their website, along with their blog, something called Masterclass. And I think they have one every month, or I don't know, they post it, and I've dropped off and haven't paid attention very much, but I know they have a regular masterclass, and they try to take some of their topics and give some good examples. That would be, I think, the best scenario to see some use cases. I don't think they have like anything listed as use cases because they're just in their 4th year and so they haven't really got that far, but that you do bring up a good subject matter, so I think I might just jump on that myself.
Yeah, and there's almost an infinite number of use cases, because I mean, anybody that's built websites for clients for any period of time, everybody comes up with something really off the wall. Not everybody, but a lot of people come up with off the wall things. That's why I love Elementor so much, is that it's so flexible. I can deal with it. They'll say, well, I want this to be here, but if such and such happens, I want this to be here. And it can get pretty complicated, but what I'm just to maybe this will help you, Guy. I don't know when, but I'm planning on setting up a live stream later in the spring or the summer, where once or twice a month that would go live and people could answer. I'd be available, or some other. Maybe we'd have other Elementor people who are more Elementor experts available to walk people through how to do something, and with their use case. So keep an eye out for that. I'll let y'all know when that starts. But just I had meant to show you this, and I'll show you, and maybe you could learn something from this. In the Plus add-ons for Elementors, they call it display rules, and they have you click on this and you get a training video on how to do it. But instead of display conditions, they call it display rules. And so you could go in, and they may have a number of conditions. Is there a particular instance of an example that you can think of that you might want to do?
Not off the top of my head, but I do know a potential project I have coming is a condo association, and that's one of those exact things where you have certain members need to see certain things, other members need to see other things, or like the condo association board needs to see separate things. So I've been starting to try to think about possibilities for that.
Yeah, and then there's other plugins that there's one called hide content. You can specify, I don't remember how you specify, but there's, how years ago when the iPhones first came out, there was kind of their tagline was, there's an app for that.
Yeah.
Well, more and more with WordPress, there's a plugin for that, just about. So yeah, if you come up with a use case, check back with us next month, and maybe we can help you with that specific use case and give you some ideas as to how to accomplish that.
Certainly, because the other part of it is when you want to be able to like suggest solutions to a customer that maybe they haven't thought of, and it's just hard to do when you don't know like or at least enough of the possibilities to give them maybe more than one type of example or of use possibility.
Well, a use case that comes to mind that I believe, if I remember correctly, we can do with this the Plus add-ons is one of the conditions can be the referrer that you could have. We talked about these pages. Let's see. Let's go back. Let's say you had a post. Let's say you did a blog post about Elementor and you posted it to Facebook. And you could put a condition on here saying that if the link that brought them to this page was from Facebook, it could conditionally show whatever you want, a specific ad. If it wasn't from Facebook, it would show something else, because you can, some of the conditions that there's like referrer, and you may, trying to think of other kinds of conditions. What kind of conditions do you set up, or maybe that's not how you use the dynamic content? Sharon, what dynamic conditions do you use often?
Oh, well, it obviously depends. I've used them for job postings. I've used it for products, different products from the WooCommerce. Depending, like some of the products that I've had to work with had to display certain content based on what the product was, and then
right.
based on that product, then I'd have to gather specific information from the customer in order to order that product. Like they couldn't even order the product till they supplied this information. So
right.
So this is going very in depth, and that's why I like the dynamic content for Elementor, because that's the only plugin that I can do that stuff with. So along with, I use pods instead of ACF, but it does the same thing, pods and ACF. I just like pods better. So you set up your content that you're collecting or displaying using the pods and custom fields. And then I can retrieve a lot of that information and display it, based on certain elements that I need to gather using my dynamic contents for Elementor. And so it just depends, what the client wants. And if it's and I have to say, these are really building advanced websites. I mean, these people that you're going to use stuff like the dynamic content are for people that are really advanced. They're pulling stuff from a database that they have, and they're wanting to display it based on certain conditions. So it can be very simple, but it can also be very complex.
Yes. So let me see here. Any other questions that you may have come to this hoping to find an answer for? Doesn't have to be on this topic. Were there any questions in the chat?
Let me just add to that, Jerry, while you're collecting questions. So you can do a lot of basic dynamic content with just Elementor and Elementor Pro, like you were showing, and also this dynamic content plugin, dynamic conditions, sorry. These are very good plugins, for doing very simple, show and hide conditions. But when you're getting to where you're asking yourself questions, okay, how am I going to pull in blah, blah, blah based on this type of element? So that's when you need to start looking at more advanced plugins to help you with those display issues.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as much as possible, sometimes it's not possible, but we try to show things that people can,
Don't have to spend money
because this is an yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, because there's a lot of people are new and haven't even really decided that they want to go down the Elementor path and to plop down a certain amount of money.
Speaking of, remember that Elementor has a new purchase path now. You might want to tell everybody to get their pro version very quickly and get the I forget what they labeled. I have the one that has, like, you can get 1,000 websites on it. That's going to go away if you don't do your purchase. What's the date? By the end of March, is it?
I think so. And yeah, they've come up with 2 new levels, and it's considerably more expensive.
More expensive. It's like the plan is $4.99 and $9.99, I think. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, and but if you have
current,
what do they call it? Expert is the high end right now.
Yes, the expert level.
If you have that already, you get grandfathered in, as I understand.
Yes.
Now, will you get grandfathered in going forward, or just for one more year?
No, you get grandfathered in going forward.
Oh, okay. So that is something you really want to get on. I was wondering about that. I was like, well, I mean, that's great, but if I only get it for one more year and then I gotta,
you would hear
if you get grandfathered into perpetuity. Thank you for letting me know that. I will get on that.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
One is the 1,000 websites, and I was like, but mine is set to renew until May, so that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Elementor is good about the grandfathering, because when I first got Elementor, it wasn't called Expert.
Yeah,
I don't remember what it was called.
It was like it wasn't even called Agency either. I forget what. It was just, in fact, when I first started, it wasn't even 1,000 websites. You could do unlimited, and then they changed it. They changed.
Yeah, when I first got it, it was unlimited websites, and it cost $99 a year.
Yeah. Yep.
And then it, I don't know, what was it, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, they changed it to 1,000 websites, and it went up to $199 a year. But I still was paying $99 a year.
Right.
And would continue. And then they had a sort of a gift to the Elementor leaders, the people who do put on these meetups, that they actually gave us a code to where we could get it for free. So that's cool with me.
I need to go get that code. I forgot about that. I need to get that code again.
Yeah, because mine happened to come up when Tolly is a lady who is sort of our liaison between you and Elementor. She sort of is one of the people who is in charge of all the Elementor meetups. She sent, either her or Nofar sent out an email saying that this was available. Yeah. So I contacted Tolly, and because it just so happened, like 3 weeks after they announced this, my subscription was renewing. I think it was December 28th. So I told Tolly, so hey, I'd like to be able to take advantage of this. And so she said, okay, well, I'll get with whoever she had to get to with. And they sent me a code. And so when I renewed my subscription, it was going to be $99, but I put the code in, and then it was $0. So that was cool. But yeah, if you've got,
I think mine expires soon. That's why I haven't I didn't make a note of the code, so I was waiting till mine expired.
Yeah. Okay. Elementary pros supporting non-pros. Okay.
There weren't any questions.
Brian.
There weren't any questions.
Okay. Did you have anything to add, Brian?
I don't. You and Sharon covered everything. Everything I was waiting to say. You guys.
I'm sorry, Brian.
You're great, Sharon. Thanks for attending.
Yeah. So since we have got y'all, we got a captive audience. What would y'all like to have a as a topic? You know, because Brian and I, we have these meetings and we're like, oh, what are we going to talk about? And, you know, what do people want to know? And, you know, what would y'all like to see us help, you know, talk about? I saw ACF go in. We'd have to we could do that. We try to do things that are play off of Elementor. You know, this is an Elementor meetup, so we try to make the focus Elementor, but certainly Elementor does play with well with ACF, and I've used it extensively. That was with. I'm trying to think of how, because I built the site I told you about that had in the header template had 5 different menus. We had it set up to where that there was a form that the applicants would fill out, and it was done in Gravity forms, but it was also tied in with ACF, Advanced Custom Fields. Mm-hmm. And so when they'd fill in their name, it would populate an advanced custom field associated with that name. And when they submitted their application, it would build a profile page on that person on the fly using Elementor, Advanced Custom Fields, and Gravity Forms. And then when you go to their, and they were a custom post type. They were called participants. Participants were custom post type. Optimizing Elementor websites for speed would be great. Well, the best add-ons for Elementor. Elementor is working on that. There are ways to do it, and Sharon chime in as you feel fit, or if it's appropriate. A lot of it can be complicated and I think for the foreseeable future, as compared to some other things, Elementor is going to be slower than simple websites. Because if you look, they just recently, in one of the recent updates, tried to clean out some of the code. Because if you look at the code of an Elementor website, there's div after div after div after div, with things nested inside of other things. And I think they've done some work to try to make that better.
Yeah, they have. The last release, they've removed some extra divs.
But there are ways of doing it to where, and people are, when they're trying to speed things up, because the Elementor sites that I have built, Of course, it depends on your host and it depends on your internet connection. But they load pretty snappy. But you do it through GT. You go on these speed testing things like GT Metrics or others like it. They'll say, well, it took 7 seconds to load, and it's like, well, it's not taking 7 seconds for me to load on any computer I have. So I'm not sure how. But then they go through. What they're looking at is to see a full paint of all the stuff loaded, and there are ways to, what do they call it, Sharon, the critical CSS, to load the stuff first that only is above, for stuff above the fold, so you don't see it. You could set your images to all lazy load, meaning they don't actually load until they're meant to be viewable on the screen.
Well, you
can use.
Yes, you're right. And you can set anything to lazy load, like the CSS and JavaScript, to only load as it's needed. But I think what Carrie's trying to get to, there's so many variables to point out when you're trying to optimize using these various tools like GT Metrics, and I think somebody mentioned another one up there. And it depends on what the site is using too. I don't know where you were going with that, Carrie, but it is very encompassing.
Yeah, there's a not too complicated tool called Auto Optimize that does things like minify the JavaScript and the CSS. It can, if you've ever gone through a speed test, there's a term they call render blocking. They'll say, oh, there's an error. There's render blocking JavaScript. You can help with that. Then there's WP Rocket.
Yeah.
Does a pretty sophisticated job at speeding things up, but it's kind of, you could screw things up too if you don't know what you're doing. I've used it in the past. Right now, most of the time, I'll use Auto Optimize, because, and then you have to take into consideration mobile, because when you do rank, speed tests or ranking with Google and stuff, they're not looking at your desktop; they're looking at your mobile. So you have to take that into account. People have these giant banner images, 2,000 pixels wide across the top of their page. Well, you don't want that to be trying to load to mobile. And trying to think if I could think of a site to where.
And while you think of that, I'm going to give everybody a good reference. When it came to all of this, especially for my very professional sites, I actually turned this over to somebody else to do, because again, it's not my expertise. I'm not very good at I guess all the algorithms and stuff. And so I used a service called WP Guys. They are located in Florida. And here, let me put their link in here. And they gave me, as an agency, they give you a price, and then you can what do they call it? White label, and just charge your customer what you're going to charge them, and to compensate for their service. But they're very good. I mean, they took a website for me and they optimized it so much. I mean, it was really awesome. So I prefer not to do that type of work. I will gladly pay somebody to do it. So,
I hear you. So how would you describe what it is they do generally, or is that just what you're just, is that specifically what they do is optimize, or do they just do a whole bunch of stuff and that's one of the things they do?
that is one of the things they do. They do offer like I offer a website care package monthly,
Right.
and basically
Right.
they offer the same things that I offer. So instead of me doing those things that I offer in my care package, I just came up with a price to pay WP guys to take care of them, but I also make money off of my clients too.
Well, I'll have to check that out because that sounds interesting, because I use GoWP for the for maintenance. Brad Armstrong over at GoWP.
Oh yeah, I think he approached me once. I think I had already committed to this guy over in Florida before I talked to Brad. So I think they're about the same.
Well, they don't do optimization. I mean, you can get them to do optimization, but it's not part of their basic package.
These guys are pretty good. I mean, I was really surprised at how well they got this site optimized, because I have to tell you, I took the site over from, I want to say someone that didn't know what they were doing. So I had to do a lot of cleanup. And then once I got it to where I thought could perform pretty well, then I went to Matt. His name is Matt. And I went to Matt and said, okay, can you optimize this more? Because, it's had a lot of crap in it. So let's clean it up.
Sure.
So he got it really good, and he did use WP Rocket in there, and I think we added a couple of more things, but it runs pretty tight now.
Yeah, some just basic tips without getting fancy to make things speed up is, because I inherit websites sometimes that other people build. If you're going to have a picture that's going to be on your web page that's going to be 600 pixels wide, don't load in a picture to go there that's 6,000 pixels wide.
Well, there should be a limit now. I think WordPress, I think the last, was it the last update 4 or something? I think they made a limit on how big the pictures could be now that you upload. I think 2,500. I forget what the size is, but they gave a recommendation.
So what I do is when I'm going to add an image, let's say it's an image on a page, I take it through all the different, the desktop, the tablet, the mobile, and see how big it has to be. It's where is that image going to be its biggest, and maybe it as the responsive changes, the biggest it's ever going to be is 800 pixels wide. So that's the size I use. There's no reason for it to be any bigger. And then of course I run, I believe it's Smush It, which is an image optimizer.
Yeah.
There's other ones out there. What it does is it optimizes the image to make them smaller file size. So that can be a help. Using something like Auto Optimize or WP Rocket. Auto Optimize, I might have gotten that on an AppSumo deal because I don't pay for it monthly, but I don't think it's free. I might be wrong. But WP Rocket definitely you have to pay for. So that's an idea of, we'll think about that, Brian, about ways to optimize for speed.
Could be just like sort of just a general regime, like a good bunch of rules of thumb to follow or something like that, other than things like, image optimizing plugins. I know that sort of stuff. I'm just wondering if there's any other stuff like that, sort of what we've been talking about, like just kind of tricks and background stuff you could do.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of what Elementor slows Elementor down is it's got it's loading lots of stuff, to make everything work. JavaScript, lots of CSS, and I mean, you can, with these optimization plugins we mentioned, Auto Optimize and WP Rocket, it can minify them. It can minify your HTML, meaning it squishes it all together. It makes it just one big block of text if you look at it in the view source. There's lots of different ways, but there's not a free way to really do it upright.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You have to spend money to optimize it really good.
And I know that the speed has been a big knock on Elementor.
Yeah.
From different quarters.
Well, I mean, some of that carries up to WordPress itself. I mean, the whole WordPress thing is itself a little heavier than, and to various extents, but it can be heavier than a straight HTML, CSS, JavaScript site.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And because it's not having to do anything on the fly.
Exactly.
Although with some of the recent updates to WordPress, and particularly, I don't know what, it's very helpful to be running on a really current version of PHP. If you're running on PHP 7 as opposed to PHP 5.3, there's a noticeable difference in how fast things go. So there's a list of things.
Yeah,
so, and I guess our challenge would be how complicated do we want to make that list for our audience? Because we don't want to, at least I don't want to be speaking Greek to people. There might be a handful of people that know exactly what we're talking about, but this might be somebody who's starting a new business and wanting to build a website with Elementor, and they're saying, well, this is way, way over my head. So we have to be, at least we try to be sensitive to that. So.
Oh, certainly. Absolutely.
But looks like we're about out of time. Anything else before we close?
Great talk, Kerry.
Okay, well, I appreciate everybody who came, and as mentioned before, we will post a recording of this in the next day, or probably be tomorrow, and we'll put the link in Meetup. It will go out to everybody who RSVP'd. And thank you for all the people who contributed, and good to see you again, Sharon. Good to see you again, Guy. And all the other folks that I can't really see their names right now, but I see a lot of familiar faces. And we will see you next week, or not next week, next month. Let's get back to our thing here. Our next meetup is Thursday, March 11th. Same bat channel, same bat station, for those of you old enough to remember that. So I think we're going to close her down, and y'all have a wonderful rest of the evening, wherever you are in the world. And we hope to see you again. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Kerry and Brian.
Yes, no problem. Thanks, Guy.
Thank you, guys.
Luke, did you see my answer to your question? About it depends on really the weight of the plugins. 10 could be too much, 50 could be too much. Really just depends on what the plugin is doing itself. But there really isn't a flat number.
Yeah, and sometimes you can't help to have 20.
Okay. Yes, I saw your answer. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Good night.
Y'all have a good evening.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
You.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.